I've seen the system from the inside out for a number of years. I'm going to recap on some of the things that I've experienced and why I say that the system is corrupt, in particularly Williamson County, the Attorney General's office that oversees Williamson County in the state of Texas, and the state of Texas themselves for allowing this to go on, and ultimately the United States government. Now, I got no problem with anyone anywhere. I am a person who is friends with God. If you don't know my background yet, I walk with God. I've been blessed enough to be called up to heaven and have been doing some remarkable things with him for a number of years now. I can say I know his face because I've found him, I've seen him. I think some people argue that point, but the pure of heart see God. They shall see God. Jesus even said so. And in the process of getting close to the Holy Trinity, God filled me with the Holy Spirit, and we have been bringing incredible miracles to life. Historical walks that are absolutely verifiable, and history of the world stuff. We've been doing things for a long time now. I think it challenges some people, but just so you understand where I'm coming from, God made me a holy person and accounted me for righteousness and turned me into a righteous man. And I have been delivering his message for a long time now. In the process of doing this, I have been held in contempt, unjustly oppressed, unrighteously prosecuted, and had my civil and constitutional rights violated, broken, and trampled upon during the entire time. Now, I say they, the system, the powers that be, the people who are opposing the things that we're doing, try to make it out like they're in the right, like they're justified by doing their worst, or that they're within their law to go out and do something like what they've done to not only to me, but to my family and my young son. In particular, talking about the issues within the Child Support Division of the Attorney General's office. I believe in right and wrong, and I know the difference. I know that what's lawful is supposed to be the right thing, and in our case, doing what's right by God, the person that I'm with and have been with for this whole time, is absolutely 100% the right thing to be doing. And if the system wasn't as corrupt as it is, especially in Williamson County, we would have been able to catch something like this sooner than later. They've held a debt over me, the debt that they created, and then they prosecuted me unjustly for it. Meanwhile, they've separated me from my child, kind of like what everybody was in an uproar with what they were doing, the borders and things like that. Well, this was a sad case where they manipulated the system to do their worst, and ultimately convicted me of something unjustly. If anybody who knows me will tell you the same thing. I'm a very faithful person, very godly person, always want to help people, always want to do the right thing. So to allow for something like this to go on for as long as it has, this just shows you the corruption and the immorality and the injustice of what's really going on. In fact, when they prosecuted me, when I went before the judge, and this is what my attorney told me, that the judge looked at the paperwork and said, "This is a civil issue. I'm not prosecuting him on this." And the attorney, or the assistant DA at the time, said that this was what was handed to him from the previous district attorney, and that he didn't know what to do with it, but they were getting so much pressure that they felt that they had to do this. And so she said, "Well, this is a civil matter. I'm not gonna prosecute him on this." And my attorney said, "Well, if you're not gonna prosecute him on this, what are we even doing here?" And the judge says, "Well, you need to go find out if this is what we're going to do, because this doesn't seem right." So the ADA went and talked to the DA, who's now the DA of Williamson County. The DA signed off on it, and they came back, and then they prosecuted me. Now, they offered me, right as they basically convened with this grand jury to hand down this indictment, they said that it didn't matter that I was working. It didn't matter that I was with God. It didn't matter that I was, put through the system this way. The only thing that they said that mattered was that I didn't follow the judge's order. And with respect, I said, "Listen, I told the judge from the start, and this is the Attorney General's judge." Now, Attorney General's courtroom goes on behind closed doors. The judge that sits on that bench is very corrupt. In fact, there's a couple of them. And if you know anything about the system, the way that they get paid is based on the amount of people that they bring in through the system and how much money they collect. So they are already biased on the things that they do. It's incentive for them, if you will. So the judge that was sitting on that one was the one that pushed the DA at the time to do what they're doing. And, again, I tried to tell them from the start that I'm with God, and that, respectfully, it wasn't that I wasn't going to pay. It just, I had something I had to do in order to accomplish what God was asking me to do. And again, if you know the kind of person that I am, and the kind of person that was up against me, the ex, doing their worst all these years, making sure that I was stayed away from my child, and that they would basically hold them over me like bait, if you will. And they put me through the system. All the while, God called me to do the things that we're doing, and I've been writing for him, and I've been working to produce the things that we're delivering now. And I also had an opportunity to deliver these works going through the system, so I got to see the system from the inside out, and I saw all the corruption and all the wrongdoings and all the immoral things that are going on within the supposed civil system of America. Now, again, I'm sure Williamson County has its own reputation. If you've ever heard anything about it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. In fact, from my understanding, is the worst reputation in the state of Texas, because they throw morality out the window, and it's a numbers game for them. They're trying to see how many people they can convict, and they disregard really ultimately what God asks us to do, the merciful part of it, right? Of God doesn't just desire justice, he wants mercy too. And the kinds of things that I've seen them do to people, to secure a conviction, or to, basically ruining a lot of people's lives in the process. And again, I testify to these judges that I've witnessed firsthand, because even after I went back to them and they offered, whatever it is that they were offering, I wanted to fight this thing because I didn't feel like what I was going through was justified. And the attorney that I had representing me was helping me pro bono. And, it was a godsend to have him, represent me. And I was fortunate enough to have somebody sympathetic to, what it is that we were experiencing. But at the end of the day, he wanted to argue that I wasn't employable. And that's not the case, because I am employable, and I have been working with God. And we have all of our works and everything that we've been working on this entire time. Meanwhile, they wouldn't accept that. Even though I was trying everything I could to pay them, and every opportunity to pay, they would come and pounce on something, and basically my ex was undermining what the state was asking of me. And so in the process of trying to do what it is that they were asking, I was met with libel and slander and defamation, and I'll have 1,000 character witnesses that'll testify to that. I've got all the evidence and everything that I was ready to present everything that I've been going through. But again, when I mentioned that I wanted to fight this thing, well, they said that right away they were going to have my attorney recused. And I had been going through this trial process for over a year and a half, pushing 2 years. So that means every month going back to court to try to get to a place where I could present what it is that I've been going through. And they didn't want to have anything to do. They didn't even want to hear any of that stuff. They said, well, we're just going to have your lawyer recused. And I want you to know that if we take this to trial and you lose, you're going to prison for 2 years. And I thought, well, hold on a second. You want to now threaten me with prison, even though I'm simply trying to argue my case of that I wasn't doing anything wrong, and everything that I was trying to do was being met by someone who's doing something to me unrighteously, unjustly. And, in their eyes, the person who was doing their worst was pretending to be the victim. Again, I'm with God, and I'm doing all these things with him. And if you know anything about what we're doing, you see for yourself how wrong this is. And again, that's just one facet of some of this corruption of stuff that I've been put through with the Attorney General's office in Williamson County. So, I went through that ordeal, and I pled the case, and I accepted whatever it is that they're offering. I didn't want to go to prison. Didn't feel like I needed to. So a couple of months later, they come after me again, and I'm back in court within 6 months. And they are telling me that, I'm going back to jail again. And I thought, I've been going through this thing for nearly a decade now. And that means 10 years of in and out of jail, 10 years of getting arrested for this same thing, 10 years of someone who's been coming after me vindictively and vengefully, and the system is not doing anything. There's no recourse. There wasn't any way for me to get out from behind this thing They were giving the power to the other person who sadly has been using malicious mother syndrome tactics or parental alienation their entire time. I'm talking about a child that I was never allowed to meet, never allowed to speak with, never allowed to be a part of their life, who doesn't even have my name, who they've tried to use as a weapon this whole time. Now, God told me that no weapon formed against me will ever prosper. So, as I'm going through this entire process, trying to bring this to light, again, I'm back in court and they're telling me that I'm going to jail again. So I borrowed some money and I got out of jail, and I talked to God about it, and we were going to present a way to, make amends and pay and move forward. And that's what I was set out to do. So for the next 8 months, made payments and tried to maintain steady work while doing what it is he's asking me to do, at the same time trying to appease the system. So I went to jail 4 times in that year, and this is the year before last. This is January 2020 now. So in 2018, from May to December, I went to jail 4 times. And the first 2 times that I went to jail, it was because they said that I didn't pay enough, right? So I was making payments, not all of them, I got pretty high payments. I wasn't able to make the full payment, but I paid at least half. And every time that I would go back up, the judge said, well, you're going to jail. And I said, well, Judge, I'm trying. And they said, well, that's it, you're just going to jail. So they put me in jail because the ex wanted me in jail, and the system is the one who's getting money. So they put me in jail, they collect their money. Meanwhile, I borrow more money, I pay, I get out, try to continue doing the right thing. Well, every opportunity that they're getting, they put me back in jail. And I'm basically trying to show you that this is what the corruption and the unjust and the immorality that they've allowed to run rampant within the system has been allowing for. So this went on for 8 months. In December, I went back up there expecting to simply make this payment and get off probation that they had put me on and continue working and making monthly payments and move forward, and that was going to be the end of it. But when I get up there, it was on a Wednesday, they decided that they weren't going to see me that day, and I went up there with all my money and everything to make sure that I wasn't gonna, miss what it is that they were asking of me. And I talked to the assistant attorney general, whoever was handling the case, and she said, we're resetting your case today. We're resetting it from Wednesday to Friday. So I want you to take that money, show this person all the money that I have, and she said, I want you to go and mail that and then come back up here on Friday. I said, okay, I will. And so I did exactly what she instructed, and I came back up there a couple of days later with my receipts and everything like that. And as soon as I got there, or when I got there, she said, well, come on in, you're going to jail. And I said, well, that's not right. Hold on, why? And they were telling me that it was because they didn't have record of a couple of my payments. I said, well, hold on a second. I've got all my receipts. You saw the money that I had, just a couple of days ago. I followed your instruction. I had all the receipts from May to December. And she said, well, you're going to jail. And I said, well, I want to talk to the judge. And she said, no, I talked to the judge for you, and you're going to jail. And I said, well, what about the due process part? She said, no, it doesn't matter. You're going to jail. So without any recourse, because if you understand the way the Attorney General's office works, it works behind closed doors. So they put me in jail. Again, they gave me another 6 months. Again, this has been going on since 2009 because there's an unforgiving, unloving, unmerciful woman who had taken possession of a child, right? Who was doing the very same things that I was doing when we got divorced, but who they gave possession of this child, and they allowed her to go out and do her worst. Now, this isn't her first marriage. She's been doing this type of thing to people for a very long time. I found out her character, found out her disposition. We started falling apart at the end of our relationship. I stepped back, gave her everything, and just walked away. Like, I didn't want to fight because that's not my nature. But allowing a person like this to do their worst for all these years, it shows you why the system needs reworking, why the law needs repeal, why someone like myself, a holy person of God, if you look at anything that I'm doing, the books we've written, the ministry we're creating, the new spiritual understanding that God is asking me to bring to life right now, if you look at any of these things, you'll realize that there's a battle of good and evil going on right now, and the courts and the system and the United States need to wake up to what's really going on, that this war is spiritual, that there are good and evil people who are being manipulated and either guided by God or manipulated by the powers that be within this world, and they are running rampant all throughout this nation, all throughout the world. We have to stay vigilant. So, going through this process, right, I got out again, and I finally went up before a visiting judge that saw the things that they had put me through and realized that it was an unjust thing, so they let me out right away. Meanwhile, they held me for 4.5 months. I fell 4.5, 5 months further behind in debt that they created, they continuously create. This is going on year after year after year. And with no way to get out from underneath that thing at the time, right? Nothing. And the visiting judge said, "What are you doing in here?" And I said, "Judge, I want to ask you one question. Do you have a receipt of all my payments?" She said, "Yep, they're all right here." I said, "Do you have all of it? Is all the money there?" She said, "Yep, it's all there." And I said, "Well, what am I doing in jail?" And she said, "I don't know. I can't seem to understand that." But that's exactly what's been going on with this corrupt system, with the corrupt AG judge, with the corruption that my ex-wife has been manipulating this system for as long as she has with no recourse. So again, I'm sharing these things with you. You're probably watching this on Patreon or maybe on my website, but I'm sharing these things with you so you understand that the system is flawed, that the corruption is run rampant, that they've allowed for this type of thing to go on. Meanwhile, myself, my family, my child, we're the victims here, and we're being played by a spiritual opposition who has humanity at their whim. If you know anything about the Bible, you realize that there is a battle going on right now, and that this message, as amazing as it is, as historical as it is, it had to have that opposition there, and people are just playing their part. I get it. I'm not upset at that. What I'm troubled with is that they're saying that this is lawful, and I know right from wrong. I know God's commandments. I know what's right by Him, and I know what's wrong by Him, and everything inside of me and everything that I see going on right now is wrong. And that's why I wanted to take it to court. Because I know that if we were to present what it is that we have here, because I've got all the evidence, I've got 1,000 character witnesses that'll come and testify you to the things that they've been met with by those who have been doing their worst. Whether it was defamation or slander or libel, or them flat out just trying to, turn other people who they could manipulate against the message that we have. And there's so many reasons why I could share on you with what's right and why we should be doing these things, but there's also a lesson here for the world to understand that just because something is deemed lawful doesn't make it right, especially when a person has the wrong intention inside of them to go out and do their worst. And we see that going on with politics today. We see that going on with religious movements today. They say they have the right intention, but then they're going out and doing their worst, and that is absolutely wrong. And that is why this is unjustifiable. And that is why this is unrighteous. And that is why this is an ungodly act. And this is why I tell you that the county of Williamson County here in the state of Texas is corrupt. This is why they have so many investigations going on about their corruption. This is why they've unjustly prosecuted people in the past for years, putting them in prison for 20 years on end, withholding evidence over very things like what I'm sharing you right now. Because instead of doing the right, honorable, godly thing, this is a numbers thing. This is more about money. This is more about conviction rate. This is more about them saying one thing but doing another. It's hypocrisy at its worst. And I'm sharing that with you, and I'm hoping that when you hear this message, that you'll be just as appalled as I am that something like this is going on in this great nation. And I'm hoping that we'll all come together and stop things like this from happening in the future. Now, keep in mind, everything that I've shared with you, I want you to remember this one thing. Those who they've given the power to, like my ex, have within them, because of the law, because of how this whole thing is set up, with a simple signature, they could have erased this entire debt. The whole thing could go away in one instant if they allow for it, if they let that other person choose that. Because this is something that they say, the system says, that we're supposed to owe one another. And I've seen it happen for many years. Many people who have been caught up in the system the very same way that I'm caught up in it now. Their spouse or their ex-spouse or their ex-girlfriend or whoever it is that they have a child with simply didn't want to see them suffering, and they wanted them to be a part of their child's life, and they simply signed the paper away because they knew that this whole thing was ridiculous. But because my ex is the person that she is, and because the system has allowed for this thing to go on the way it has, she never even gave that a thought. even though she knew that she was hurting her own child. This is parental alienation at its worst. Try to imagine an obsessive person who's only hell-bent on getting retribution, who's used the system and manipulated the system and used the child as a weapon, which, by the way, God says no weapon formed against you will ever prosper. So it's no wonder that she never got what she wanted, because the whole time she's simply been trying to hurt me by keeping me in jail, by keeping me away from the child. And the system and the courts have allowed for it. Another reason the system needs repeal. Another reason the law needs repeal. Another reason. Guys, I'm with God. Like, I'm a very faithful, holy, righteous person doing right by him. Ask anyone. My final thought on the matter is this. Had the powers that be, had the system let me raise a child, had given me the child, had let me be the person responsible for them, they would have grown up in a loving household. They would have been able to visit with anybody that they wanted in their family, or his mother, or anybody on their side. I wouldn't have asked for any money, and they could have seen the child whenever they wanted, and we could have avoided this whole thing. Life could have been copacetic, if you will, right? The powers that be are simply corrupt. And those that are using a system like this to do their worst are wrong. If you can't see that, then you are part of the problem as well. This whole thing is ungodly. If you look at it, God wants the family to be together, and children deserve to have as many people loving them as possible. Not some kind of parental alienation, malicious parenting scheme that the powers that be, especially Wilco, have tried to capitalize off the pain and suffering of, the broken family, and it's wrong.